This is Jana Antoni from Create Your Tomorrow, and welcome to the Spanglish Word Networks on Zingo TV channel 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV app on the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. This app is free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, and Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs from 2016 forward. Today, I have the honor and pleasure to welcome here Katie Sisk, an award-winning epilepsy life strategist, parent coach, and elite neurocoding specialist with over 20 years of experience in helping families with children suffering from epilepsy to find creative solutions, to take back control of their lives and make it better. So I'm very honored to welcome you here.
Jana, thank you so much for having me to your show.
Thank you for accepting my invitation, Katie. So happy you are here. So I know that you have 20 plus years experience as a special educator with kids. And just to start, can you share with the audience something about your background and how did you find your way from being an educator to help families with children suffering from epilepsy? This is just a small niche, really. So it's very exciting to having you here to speak about it more.
Oh, well, again, Jana, thank you for having me and excited to be here. You know, my journey started, how many of you out there have kids that like to play? I was with my sister growing up and we would be playing school. So I was always pretending to be the teacher. So education was always in my in my journey. My sister was telling me the other day how she was doing worksheets as I was pretend playing to be her teacher growing up. And we were giggling about that. And so, it's always fun for me when I get to work with families who have not only maybe a child with epilepsy, but then also a sibling and some of the fun but challenges that come with that. The other piece around my background that came to volition is that I am a person who happens to have epilepsy. And so I wound up with a stroke in utero. And so I really had the love and support of an amazing mom and dad who I don't think knew the amazing things they were doing around allowing me to figure out what the independence was going to look like and what I needed to have in place. And as I started my teaching career early on, over 15 years ago, had the opportunity to really start working with families who had newly diagnosed children who didn't have answers. And so it's evolved into this amazing opportunity that I get to help parents see the gifts that their kids have and how to take something that can be very, very challenging and them create the own creativity that they have and that level of independence.
I love it. Just turn the trauma into a resourceful, creative place and see it as a force, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
a force for good.
Yes, exactly. I love it. First, because I've never witnessed a person living epilepsy, so I've read it about it. I saw some scenes in movies, But just can you maybe explain what's happening in biological first in biological level, also in the child age level as well, and how actually get the parents what they can observe by children to push them let's to take them to the doctor and find out what it is.
Yes. Seizures themselves can happen at any age. And having a seizure can be very traumatic on the person witnessing it, as well as maybe what is happening for that child or adult that is going through that experience. And diagnosis comes from the treatment that comes with that. And so if your child has just had a seizure for the first time, there are certain diagnostics, and some of those might include things like an EEG, which is a brain scan, to try and gather some of that information. There's a lot of research out there that is dedicated to the biological components. What I would also say, Jana, is that the unfortunate nature is that there's a lot of folks out there that don't have great understanding and cause around the biological component of how it came to be. There are some very stark differences too around epilepsy can be diagnosed as it is that you have had 2 or more seizures, that where there's actually been inactivity in your brain, and it's different from seizures that might be caused due to other non-epileptic kinds of things that come into that interface that might be happening with that individual. As we think about it through what we know, I think that there are some great opportunities out there to really lean into your heart if you are a parent who has a child who just got diagnosed, and really building trust with your team. I'm a real significant believer in a team approach and really getting those second opinions, getting the information, because it's so unique. And in some circumstances, we don't know, or there is an unknown cause to that. And yet we can implement some great strategies to really support with what we do know.
Yeah, that's beautiful what you just said. Just build the trust. I think that's a very important part. Not only with children with epilepsy, with every children or every person. It's building trust is something so crucial. We should really it should be our first step. So there are like no red flags before the first seizure the child may experience.
That's a great question. Certainly if you have a child who is very young, sometimes it can be provoked by a fever. So there can be some of those things that could provoke that. And that comes with understanding and what the diagnostics do, but working with your team around whether or not you've just had one or you've had more than that, and what you might describe from a physical lens, what you describe as an aura. So some people will get kind of a sense or something that kind of triggers what happens, and that can also provide some information. Some people don't, and that's what's so unique and specialized related to what we know about epilepsy.
Yeah.
I will say, Jana, what is just, really funny is I had a call the other day. I got a call from a real good friend of mine, and she was on vacation. They were on the beach, and she was walking with her husband, and their child, and they were playing in the sand, and her son fell over and had a seizure right in front of them. Their son had never had a seizure before. She knew my background. She reached out to me and was like, "What do we do?" And in talking to her, there comes that layer of fear that she described to me, that comes with not the unknown and the uncertainty and the unpredictability that comes with that, and seeking the medical treatment that you might need, but also educating ourselves around empowering those and talking about it. This is such a significant topic in that way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And let's dive right into it. How do you, oh, I have so many questions. I don't even know where to start. So, well, you just said it. There is so much, especially when it happens for the first time, there must be so much fear. And like, what's happening and what should I do? Oh my God, what should I do that I don't harm him or her even more? And so what is, when your friend called you on the beach, what did you say to them? How should they react, or maybe the other parents as well, when they will experience something similar for the first time?
Yeah, for the first time, I would encourage anyone to just remember the love that you have for the person that you are with, and that that person really will be okay. And that while I think it's important to know their medical history, if it's the first seizure they've ever had, and making sure that they get the medical treatment urgently that they might need, because there's no diagnosed episode captured as of yet, uh, versus someone who maybe already has a diagnosis. And following their seizure action plan and some of the things that might need to be in place related to that. What I would say, if you are with a child or an adult that is having a seizure, is being able to be with that person, turning them on their side, just so that they have the airway that they might need, and staying with that person, perhaps giving them a little bit of uh, reassurance. For some people, they can hear. Seizures look very, very different. And so there could be some where, my friend had called and her son had fallen and had a generalized tonic-clonic seizure. And what that means is that is losing full body and consciousness, where there is shaking and some of those things. And yet, other seizure episodes could simply be that you are conscious, but you are losing maybe your ability to talk, or that there's more of, say, a staring episode, which sometimes can look like inattention. And so there's many different types of seizures and the biological chemistry that can sometimes happen. And that what we also know, and we're seeing this a lot in schools now, is that the stress that comes with managing, class schedule and some of those other emotion regulation things are manifesting in seizure-like activity that is actually non-epileptic, or it doesn't have a biological base to it. And so, I know there was a question in the chat from one of our
Yeah,
listeners around
beautiful.
what
Yes,
seizures look like. So I
question.
thought I'd take that opportunity to just build in a little bit more around that biological question, Jana.
Yes, and it's very interesting what did you say. So, like, when a child have this type of seizure that will they look like inattentive. It might seem like they just will sit on the chair and just gaze nowhere and just be still like that. Would it look like? So no shaking body, no.
The important thing is that they're not like alert, right? So it may look inattentive, and it's important to keep that person safe. So it may be maybe without touching them because of their inalertness, but making sure that they're safe. If they're standing, is there a way to kind of coach them into maybe a sitting position or something of that nature? But being aware of their surroundings, whether it is epileptic of nature or biological, or if there's something else under happening there for that individual. There's something to be said, Jana, I think, and this goes to all the listeners out there, around just love and care, and loving that person just for who they are, and helping them see that we all have something that is, and challenges to overcome whatever they are, and that we have strengths within those, to utilize those.
We will definitely go to that part. But first, I would like to, because this is also very new for me. And I had always the image, the seizure of an epilepsy is everybody falls down and starts shaking the body. And there's this danger of suffocation. What you are telling me now, it's that the people, children or adults, can have a seizure even when they are standing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
There are many different types of seizure activity. that I had mentioned earlier, more generalized tonic-clonic, where it is
Yeah.
what, you know, a lot of people through movies and other things, through what we used to know and understand, think seizures are, and yet what we know about some of the other layers of other types of seizure activity where there is a misfire happening from a biological lens in your brain, depending on if you know maybe where that damage is related to, maybe is it frontal lobe, is it temporal lobe, what's the lobe maybe that was affected, and that can have the direct implication related to where the misfire might be happening, where you're not, a person might not just fall, or the shaking types of behavior that sometimes can happen, or that stiff type of look where you're losing some of those pieces, versus some of those where you're losing consciousness. But it, you know, is very, I have a young lady that I'm working with right now, Jana, who is 14, and has some episodes where they are more just, she's losing consciousness for 30-second intervals, where while I'm engaging in conversation with you, that suddenly will stop talking. And there's loss of consciousness, and she's lost 30 seconds. Okay. And it's happening very, very frequently. She is of a type that medication is not doing as much as, you know, it could at this point. And yet she's educated her community a lot, which has been really beautiful to see what she and her family have been doing. And we were laughing the other day because she said she was with her friend John, and John had noticed, she was in class, noticed that she'd lost some consciousness, and immediately started taking notes, and, you know, like some additional notes, so that she could give it to her mom around how long it lasted. And I was laughing with her, but she said, you know, what I love about my friend John is that he always shares his class notes with me. He'll always catch me up on what I missed.
Yeah, that's amazing.
There's some of that sometimes comes with what, from a learning standpoint, some of the other implications that come, but how you can turn what could be a real big challenge, and then involving your community in their superpowers and the gifts that they can give to the people that they care about.
Yeah, this is beautiful, because really we need to start educate people about this, bring the awareness out of the public, and leave the shame and the guilt, and just share it, the vulnerability, to even preventing something. But what interests me is how people, for example, when they don't know this is a seizure, and just see a person, a child that's staring and be inattentive and lose the conscious, they might even know they are having a seizure. And you said before that the important thing in the moment is create a safe place. Yes. Loving and kindness. And when the people, they are not aware that the epilepsy, the seizure, could look like that, and they just see a person staring, they may even rush out. They may even be unkind, or, you know, how do you how people, they don't know how the seizure looks like, how should they know? or how should they react? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. You know, I think it goes back to the education around how we educate our schools and our communities around that. I know that a number of states in the United States have passed some bills recently to ensure that there is education that the nurses do in their buildings around awareness and what to look out for and some of those things. If you're a parent that has a child with epilepsy, you could, if you're in the United States, you can work with your local epilepsy foundation, who can provide some support to the school district or the specific school around some general, like maybe safety precautions, but also education on what epilepsy is and what epilepsy is not. And I think it also leads to me to say, Jana, that, often a lot of referrals I get through some of the work that I do in partnership with some of our schools is, well, this child is acting out. This child is showing behavior because they're not attentive, and or something's happening there. And so, are we doing a good job at educating our schools and our communities with some of the other things that might be going on? I had a case a couple of years ago. I was working with a family who had a young man had some attention and focus challenges, but also some externalizing kind of behaviors where he was getting really grumpy. I don't know if you're a parent out there listening and tuning in, and you can think of your child that maybe is getting a little grumpy, maybe a little hangry. Maybe they've just gotten home from school and they're stomping up their stairs to their classroom, their bedroom, right? And slamming that door. And, it turned out we did a real significant medical evaluation, and this young man wound up having type 1 diabetes.
Oh, wow.
And I bring it up just because you never know. And behavior is just a form of communication, whether it's inattention, whether it's something that's happening. And while you're asking me a question related to education and how we can really support it through epilepsy, I think it expands to, regardless of what your child might be struggling with, what is the education we need to do so that the teacher that they're working with or their friend's family knows a little bit about maybe what's going on for your child that can help them grow and learn and flourish into the amazing, amazing individual that they are.
Yeah, education, love it. Yeah, and a good point. Education is a big part. We often, as teachers or as parents, when we see this behavior that doesn't conform to our rules, social rules, we see it, we just reject it and evaluate it, assess it, like showing off, and this is just behavior, and we don't look. We are not curious. And I love what you said with me when we were talking along. It, like, turn this guilt spreading and this correcting and this misconceptions to the curiosity. Just be curious, ask questions, what is happening with your child, and find the answers before you respond in a way that could even worsen the situation, whatever, or right. I think it's about communication, and I'd like to come back to what you said in your story with this child finding the classmates that help them or help him with taking the notes. I think normally, in my experience as a teacher, I had in class child with alopecia, lost hair, and had to take lots of medicaments, and she gained lots of weight, and she wore always a hoodie, a cap, just to hit her boldness. And all kids were loving as soon as we communicated, because at first they didn't understand what's happening. Why is she wearing always hats and hoodies, and why is she overweight? She nourished very good, and nobody understood, and they were picky on her, And as soon as we spoke about it, as the whole class, it's something in children just shifted, and they were suddenly so supportive to her, and they, even when they were outside with other classes, they were defending her. And I think that this is a big piece, because we stick always still in this education with these kind of things. We should just keep it taboo, not talking about it, and we should do quite the opposite. Right?
Yes. It's such a good example of doing the opposite and taking what this young lady experienced with overlate had me thinking a little bit about some of the bullying that some students experience when their classmates don't know and don't understand, and there hasn't been, the education around whatever that piece is for that child, and has me really thinking about when we are using our communication and not afraid to say, I have this thing, whatever that is, and this is what I need help with, and use it as a catalyst. And what I mean by that is whatever that diagnosis is, to not use the diagnosis as a crutch of, well, this person is going to help me. And, as you first had asked me my own personal journey and how I got into what I do, is the one thing my mom and dad always did for me is they never made excuses. They always look for what it was that I could do as my next step on my own, and what did they need to ask me or teach me so I could do it on my own. And it
Yeah.
sounds like with this young lady that you were just talking about, that there is a layer of, once that education happened, there was an ability of independence. And then how we can use whatever that is, whether it's epilepsy, another type of condition that someone has, using it as a catalyst to propel forward. And what
Right.
I mean by that catalyst is really how to use the gifts that it brings. This young lady that I had mentioned earlier, where she has a group of friends that really will just, update her on things she misses. And I asked her, I said, well, what's made the biggest difference? And she said, my friends are really patient, Katie.
Mhm.
They don't forget that I'm out here. And sometimes I can't go out and go to the movie, or I can't go out and do, like go to the dinner thing or the birthday party, but I always get asked. My friends never forget that. And because they know what I'm going through, and she shared her like brain scans with her friends and done
Mhm.
some really cool stuff. And,
All right.
it's just really neat to see what her community has done,
Yes.
to really allow her to educate her friends and her teachers and whatnot on her own understanding. And if
Yeah.
there's one thing I could recommend to people, it really is giving that accountability to that person, depending on their age, around what they know and their ability to communicate what those needs are, and what they can do.
Yeah. This is a very big part. We often hide ourselves in shame and guilt because
Yeah.
we feel suddenly different, we feel suddenly
Yeah.
weak, we feel suddenly disabled, we build a wall around us and in armor that nobody gets to us, and if nobody gets to us,
Mhm.
is uh, they can't understand either. So really
Yeah.
to share it, we
Yes.
get the we give them the chance to understand it,
Yes.
and we suddenly there is a support, and suddenly there are things happening, and we really go to our vulnerability. It's the best thing we can do. And I love Eric. He asks lots of questions. I love it, and I would like to take his last question. Are there nutritional steps to take that would aid in prevention or post seizure?
Yeah, Eric, it's a great, question, and I think it relates back to the client you were, or student you had, Jana, with kind of the overweight component as well. There are some nutritional things, I think, depending on if, specifically with epilepsy, if it's biological of nature, there's a lot of research out there around the benefits of ketogenic diets and a variation of that. Some other terminology that some of you might be familiar with is modified Atkins. Some of those things would really recommend folks work with their treatment team and consult with a nutritionist that might have some expertise to really be part of that team. I will say that from a nutritional lens, um, there is a lot to be said about being really conscious, whether the ketogenic diet is the right fit or not, around what we're doing and what we're putting in our physical bodies, and the direct correlation that there is around prevention. To build off of a little bit what Eric was talking about post seizure, we would never recommend that you're doing anything from like a food piece right after a person who has had an epileptic seizure, in terms of that, because often there is what we call a postictal state. And so they need some of that recovery time. But as we think about it through the lens of nutrition, there is some things, as we all know, related to staying hydrated and really being conscious about eating at incremental times if that's right for you. I will tell you, in my own, say, personal journey, through trial and error, through systematic approaches, I actually am not on medication right now. And part of that really has to do with the nutritional changes that I've made. And then also similarly, and this ties to Eric's question, is related to the nutrition beyond food. And what I mean by that is, what does sleep hygiene look like? What do the habits look like? Which I know we all can relate, right? All the parents out there, what's the routine you have for yourself? What's the routine that you have for your child? And really, really sticking to some of those systematic things and allowing there to be mistakes along the way. Because when we allow there to be the mistake, and what I mean by mistake is like we're trying something and it's not working. And it's okay if it actually doesn't work. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. Trial and error. Everybody.
Trial and error. What is it going to work? And what is at a different stage may work, and then at a different stage it may not. And so there are like different epilepsies where it's really in childhood, and sometimes it, there isn't that continued need later on in adulthood. But again, I think I said this at the beginning of the show, that a seizure can happen at any moment, and what our statistics are is that is that a lot of people are going to experience a seizure in their lifetime. So it's at the education and going beyond it through the lens of different habits, and as you mentioned, trial and error, Jana.
Yeah, and Eric. My the most repeated quote in my classroom were, "I love mistakes." My children, they knew it. I love mistakes that show me that you are learning and you are growing. If you don't make mistakes, you are stuck. so please just try and error. That's beautiful. And I love it that through this strategic approach, you could get off the medication and you not having the seizure. That's pretty great. It's amazing.
Yep.
It really is amazing. So you were, what caught my attention before is that you told after the seizure, the post seizure, the people need some time to recover. So what do they need after the seizure?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had alluded to what we call clinically a postictal state, and that can look very different depending on the type of seizure. If your child has a seizure that is generalized tonic-clonic, there can be more of an exhaustive state that happens afterwards where that person might just need some time to rest. And oftentimes, depending on the severity and the length and the duration and some of those kinds of things, that sometimes for some can take a couple days to really come back to that like normal baseline, whatever that is for you. For others, I mentioned this young lady that I just adore in what she's doing in her school and educating in hers with these kind of 30-second kind of pieces. She's coming right back to alert state. There can be other implications as we think about it through learning and cognition and some of those layers, and what we know about the brain. And yet, what do people need? It varies. I would certainly say one thing I'm always saying to parents is love your child, remind them that they are loved for exactly who they are, and remind them that there's a gift that they get to give. I had a client who was sharing with me that, her son, she looks at it as occasionally my son just needs a reset. Now just a reset to then, and then we kind of get to start over, and then we get to learn from any of those hiccups. And I really loved it because it reminds me of the importance of language that we use with our children in general, and how we talk about seizure activity, how we talk about epilepsy, how we talk about any diagnosis. I around that earlier, we were talking about, Jana, the disability aspect of that.
Yeah.
And if you're somebody that has a piece of paper, I would encourage you to write the word disability, write it out. And if you've got it in front of you, do it now. And then I'm going to challenge you to take that same word and then put dis and then separate and put ability. Because regardless of what it is, there's something really powerful about the language to help a child see the ability that they have, and maybe what that seizure taught them that they can bring. I brought up earlier that level of patience, which I think we all can relate to. Sometimes it can be really hard to be patient with our children when they're not listening.
It is. This is a big piece, the patience. Because especially nowadays, with all these distraction we have, the smartphones and and this computers and whatever, we are so distracted, and we lost completely this ability when we are in abilities, this ability to be patient. We just lash out.
Yes.
We just get angry and overwhelmed and frustrated and just lash out. And so this is a very smooth transition to talk about parents.
Yes.
So how we already talked about how parents should react, how should they communicate. But I can imagine there are still enough parents when they learn about the diagnosis, that they are afraid, they may be ashamed, and they just teach the children, either you are now who you are, weak, we don't talk about it, and you are just a poor kid, and that's it, right? And I can only imagine that's causing more harm than it helps. So what would you recommend to parents when they learn that their child has been diagnosed with epilepsy? And I can imagine that my really first emotion would be a fear, or they might be afraid. So, and I will expand my questions. When they then the seizures occurs more and more, how it must be also exhausting at the beginning, at least, until they learn how to cope with that, how to support them, and how to support themselves as parents. So lots of questions in my one question, right?
Well, they're all really good questions, Jana. I think to first respond is to really, parents out there, honor the gift in your child and honor yourself as the parent, in that I know that you love your child and what they're experiencing. And it leads me to say that regardless of whether your child is newly diagnosed with epilepsy or you're in a new stage of your child's epilepsy journey, and what I mean by that is maybe you have a child who was diagnosed at the age of 5, and yet your child is now 20. And that's still your child, while that child is a young adult now, probably trialing some different independence. And I might offer to the parents out there, what's the support that you need at this stage in your journey? The first step of maybe what are the questions you need to ask to maybe mitigate the stress and the fear that is going on for you, and to give yourself patience. The second thing I would recommend to all our parents out there around that self-care is getting the help that you might need. I'm working with a family right now who has a son who is 22 very significant cognitive disabilities, in addition to the epilepsy, is not able to live independently. This family has done an amazing, impeccable job at really supporting a team care approach and hiring some intermittent caregiving. And so parents out there, where's the date night? Or where's the opportunity where you're going out and doing something for yourself so that you have the energy to give? And where are we modeling for our kids that when we take care of ourselves, we have more to give to our children? Your child will be okay. It is scary, and that's not to mitigate some of the scariness that comes with it, but there are layers of that when we can see that our children have the ability to be independent in whatever form that looks like, and whatever that support also might look like to get them to that stage, that's some of the fun pieces we get to do as parents, right? Is we get to watch the magic of their growth and the prompting and facilitation we might give of allowing them to try something on their own, and help them see that if they're ready to take a risk, what might need to be in place to help them take that risk, and then what can we learn on the other side to really support that, but giving our parents the gift of some of that self-care. Eric earlier had brought up questions related to nutrition, and we were talking a little bit, Jana, about the habit piece, which I think is important for me to touch on as we think about our parents out there. What's the habit that needs to be in place for yourself? How can we be breathing and giving our own selves the self-love and using language in ourselves that it's not our fault? There's nothing that is the fault. It's just something that's happened and something that we get to support. And how can we reframe that language to really support with what I can do and how we're modeling that for our kids?
Yeah, it's very beautiful. And we often, and not only parents with children with epilepsy, but every adult, I would say, we often forget about our own needs, what
Yes.
our own relaxing stay activities, what we need to get up our energy. Because you can, when you spoke about giving them the attention in time, you can't give something from an empty glass. So if you are empty, energetically exhausted, mentally, physically, you can't support your child the way you would love to, because you don't have enough resources in your own. So this should be really the first step. And maybe especially for parents, I can imagine they just feel a little bit guilt if they put themselves first, right? But I love always the visualization that I've heard from left and from the right. If you're on a plane and the oxygen masks pull down because of whatever is happening, they always say, okay, put first the oxygen mask on yourself and then on your child. Otherwise, the child wouldn't have mother or father, right, to take care of. So this is the same thing. We should selflessly take care of ourselves, yes, and to be able to help our children, right, to support them in the right way. In the second part, you spoke about independence. Oh boy. That can some parents freak out, even if they have completely healthy children, right?
Yes,
just
you can.
Giving them space and letting them go to a risk. Oh my gosh, no. No way. And yeah, especially with children, they are at healthy risk. So this is pretty huge. So how do parents cope with these feelings to really to let go a little bit, to let children make their own experiences and find their independence and autonomy?
I think some of that ties to perhaps the forgiveness that needs to happen. I watch some of the families I've worked with and how we think about what needs to be in place to really empower that, and then what you're comfortable with. So what, if your child wants to go out with a friend and do something at the park, what would you be comfortable with that would allow and afford that to happen? Is that you're a chaperone? Is that you're a person that you've reviewed their safety plan, their seizure action plan with the people that will be, there, and that's great. And where are you thinking about the one step that you can stretch that is a little bit uncomfortable, but that you're okay with? Because the more we can get uncomfortable, it creates space for us to be a new level of comfort in what stage your child is at to become even more independent than they are. And giving them the protection and the love where they need it, but offering those layers of success where that needs to
I
be.
love that.
Yes.
I love that. Yeah. And I had direct some line and I completely lost it right now. but I love that. No, it's back. So the first step is always be aware, right? Be aware what's happening inside me and ask questions. Be curious, right? Not judgmental, but curious. Turn your judgment, turn your assessment and evaluation to the curiosity. What's happening inside? What do I need? Or what question do I need to ask? And then I love this comfortableness and stretch it out a little bit, like to move to lean forward. I love it. I would have like 1,000 other questions, and I know we have been talking about leadership actually. So what I like to ask you even now is I'd like to invite you again and another day and just to continue this conversation, because it's very interesting, it's very exciting, it's new. I think you brought so huge value, and I thank you for that. And before we go off, can you just share where people they would like to reach out to you for help, where they can find you?
Yeah, I think the best way to find me is through Instagram and Facebook. Would be the best way to reach out. And you can private message there. Would be great. And Jana, I just want to thank you. Thank you for the gift for having me on, and some of my passion around education around epilepsy, and how we can really support our communities and our parents with kids that have some of these more medical-based challenges, and are the leaders in us. So I look forward to partnering with you in the future. Thank you for having me.
I love you, and I'm very honored that you are here, really. So just for me clear, the people type your name, Katie Sisk, on Facebook, and they will find you.
They will find me there. Yes.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. And I'm looking forward to meeting you here again and talk more about the topic and expand it even more. So really, really thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Eric, for those beautiful questions. So this show can be also heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out the www.spanglishwords.ca for all the news and programming Spanglish Word. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thank you very much, all of you. Enjoy your day.